Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you for joining this afternoon. I'm very excited. Today we have Christy Kennedy here with us from the OSU Assistive Technology Center. She is an occupational therapist, but not only an occupational therapist, a very specific occupational therapist, which I'll let her go into the details there for her credentialing, but we're just thrilled to have them back. This is her third time, I think, coming to present for us. So I will hand the mic over to her.
Thank you so much, Ava, and thanks everyone for inviting me to be here today. I'm excited to be back. It's been, I think, 2023 since I last gave a presentation here on driving, and then we were here, I think, last year-ish talking about our other services in the Assistive Technology Center as well. So I'm always excited to be here. I will tell you all as I go through this presentation, if you think of a question along the way, I am okay to stop. So if you want to just raise your hand and let me know. And also if you can't hear me okay, or if there's something that happened from a technology standpoint, just shoot a hand up and I'll take care of that, okay? So awesome. So I'm here to give a presentation on driving safety. And as far as credentials go, many of us at the AT Center are either physical therapists or occupational therapists. I am an OT. And we also have other credentials. One of mine is called an assistive technology professional. So that means I specialize in all things technology. And I'm also a driver rehab specialist. Many of our other teammates in the driver rehab world are called CDRS, which means they pass a big fancy exam. I have not taken that step yet just because I do a lot of things at the AT Center as well. So I got too many letters behind my name already. So thanks for having me back. All right. So today we're going to talk about what we do at the AT Center. We're going to identify some effects of aging on driving safety. One thing that I added newer this year is I wanted to talk about some of the safety features that are coming out on these vehicles. I feel like that's been a big topic of discussion for the clientele we're seeing recently, and I figured you all might have curiosities about that as well. And then we're going to give some tips on how to remain safe while driving as long as possible, and then we'll answer some group questions. So we are located at 2050 Kenny Road, just down the road in Columbus. We've had a lot of renovations to our building over the past few years, similar to yourselves here. We invite you to come on out and see us, and typically we have a whole staff. I feel like every time I come here, we've got more staff members added to this list. So we have a full driver rehab team. All of us in the driver rehab world are occupational therapists. We do have one rehab engineer, Liz, as well. She's kind of like the face of our whole center. She does it all. So typically when you come to see us, you would see an occupational therapist for an eval. Our spectrum of driving that we see is across the whole continuum. So we start with novice drivers. A lot of times people that have a medical condition already, that means they need a little bit more help to learn to drive. We work with people that have had an injury like a stroke or a spinal cord injury, helping getting them back into driving. And we also talk about the folks that are maybe retired already and now they're thinking, hey, am I still safe to drive? So we call that kind of like our driving retirement spectrum there. So there can be a variety of conditions involved with that. So that's what we see. So what do we do? So when we come to see us, there's a whole bunch that goes on in one appointment. We want to educate all drivers on the Ohio driving requirements. We want to help with compensatory strategies. There's technology that can help people stay safe. There's adaptive equipment we might need to try out. We can recommend adaptations to a vehicle. We do prescribe equipment, and we can also collaborate with mobility equipment dealers who would be the ones to install that equipment. But other things we do in the AT Center in general, we have 3 service lines. We do our driver rehab, we do our wheelchair clinic, and what we call our smart clinic. And that is just kind of all other ancillary technologies. We've given a presentation on that, and we're always happy to come back on that as well. So coming back to kind of what are we looking for aging and driving? What are some changes to watch out for? So there are lots of age-related changes to driving. I kind of have it in 3 groups. There's vision changes, attention and reaction time changes, and then physical changes. Oops. I done went to the wrong slide. There we go. So we'll start with vision changes. All right, so many of you might be familiar with some of these diagnoses, things like cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration. These are things that we will screen for when you come and visit us, and they are certainly things that are directly related to your driving safety. We always kind of say, as a rule of thumb, if your goal is to remain a driver, you want your vision to be as sharp as possible, and so we want to know about these diagnoses up front, and these are things that can happen slowly over time. A lot of times you're not aware of it until an eye doctor tells you about this. So I'm going to kind of go quicker through this section than I did before, but this just gives you an idea of what certain vision changes do and what kind of things would kind of be a symptom that you would want to ask an eye doctor about. So cataracts is known for kind of making cloudy vision. There's surgery for that. Glaucoma, it kind of makes your vision like a pinhole. It gets really centralized. Macular degeneration makes your vision look more spotty. This one can be kind of interesting how it works because you might not be even aware of the changes happening to your vision here. Also, diabetic retinopathy is a big thing to watch for. Anyone that has diabetes and your blood pressure is something that you're watching and your blood sugar is something that you're watching that can affect your eyes later on. And this is another one that can happen without someone's awareness right away. Other age-related changes, just in general, as we get into dusk driving or nighttime driving, recovering from glare can be a bigger issue that comes up, and that can lead to temporary blind spots. Being able to focus in on smaller text, like little tiny street names, that can get more difficult. And also peripheral vision, so that our ability to see what's next to us without looking at it, that can change over time. That's expected to change. So kind of a lot of those things are related to the pupil reaction time. So as that decreases and the eye lens thickens, that changes the amount of light you can see. So that makes your vision impaired in some way. And then it makes it difficult to see things at low light levels. As an occupational therapist, we might use a term called contrast sensitivity. That just means you'll have a harder time, like if it's rainy, or if there was snow on the roads, like we might remember a few weeks ago. We're glad that's over. You know, it really changes how clearly you can see things when all the colors are starting to look the same. We always encourage corrective lenses. A lot of you might have on your license a little restriction that says you must wear corrective lenses while driving. That's something that the state of Ohio or the BMV would make a call for when you go to renew your license. We recommend avoiding eyewear that restricts your side view or your peripheral view. We recommend not wearing sunglasses at night. If you're feeling the need to do that for some reason, that's something to bring up with your eye doctor. And we do, like I said, watch out for that restriction on your license. If it says B on your license, that means they want you to wear your glasses while driving. So then talking about what do we do with a vehicle when we're having changes to our vision? Don't tint your windows crazy. Don't drive at night as much. Try and keep your windshield and your mirrors and headlights as clean as possible. This is something that's interesting. If you're having vision changes, you might not be aware that your actual windscreen is now clouded up with dust and dirt. So it's important to have maybe a family member or some other community member check that out. I got resources for that too. Larger dials are great. Make sure you can see everything on the dashboard. Also, if glare is a problem, there's different ways to handle that. Rear view mirrors nowadays can kind of actually reduce that glare on their own. There's coverings you can put on, like kind of a lens kind of thing that helps reduce that glare. Also, you want to make sure you can see clearly over the steering wheel. So sometimes adding a little foam wedge or a cushion can help you get better, raise your view so you can see more in front of you. You want to see, 10 feet of the road in front of the vehicle, and from an Ohio standpoint, they need you legally to have 3 inches of line of sight above your steering wheel. So if you ever are concerned that you're really not able to, you're having to stretch to see, you might need to consider, adapting your seat to make your point of view higher. There's other mirror adaptations you can do. You can add on little button mirrors. We also call them just mirror extenders. That can really help give you a broader point of view next to you. And now we're on to the next thing. We're on to what happens with your attention and reaction time. All right, so common changes, dividing attention is something we assess for in clinic and something that OTs know really well. That divided attention piece is a major factor in driving safety. What that is essentially is how well can you balance more than one task at the same time. That's the whole thing of driving, though. So if that's starting to become a challenge, that really can impact you in a broad way. Reaction times in general, that's more of a physical thing. That can become slower. Sensory perception, so like how fast your brain's reading the signal changes, and often the brain just needs more time to process and respond. So here's where I've added some newer statistics. People seemed interested in this last time, so I thought I'd dive deeper into this again. Part of what we do in the driver rehab world is we're always paying attention to certain highway statistics and kind of what's happening with crash reports, how are people getting into accidents, what's improving, what's getting worse. One major topic that is still a huge topic of discussion is driver distraction. I think people right off the bat think about cell phone use, but it's more than that. It can be eating, grooming, like if you're picking something out of your eye or adjusting your hair, adjusting the radio, and certainly talking to passengers. 8% of fatal crashes and 14% of injury crashes, and 13% of all police-reported major vehicle crashes in 2021 were reported as distraction was the cause. I kept this in from my older presentation, but I just thought it's still very interesting. It just kind of shows the percentage of different age groups and how big was distraction in the cause of all accidents across the board, or was related to all accidents. So you can see the tallest tower, I'll point it out here. Tallest tower there, we're looking at the age group of 25 to 34, but it's still very, very important all the way into like 65 into mid 70s. Younger population, this is a high thing, but it's still just as important, but we don't see it quite as much as our age increases. Maybe something about maturity too. This is interesting. This is statistics that I pulled for this most recent year, but it's actually based on 2023 data that takes a few years for these things to be produced. I wanted to pull statistics that are more similar to this age group. So older drivers made up 22% of all licensed drivers in 2023. Thought that was pretty cool. Compared to 18% in 2014. So our population is aging. Everyone knows that. And it shows here in the statistics. In 2023, there were 59.2 million people who were age 65 and older, and that's 18% of the total US population. And among the older population, the traffic fatality rate was 100,000 in 2023, and that's the highest for the age group of 80 to 84. So that means the largest risk factor for getting into an accident amongst the older population is actually our oldest drivers. That kind of makes sense, but I just like to see that statistics. If any of you are curious about the data, I just included the links here, and Ava can share my slides with you later so you can check that out. I'm just a nerd, maybe some of you are too. I also wanted to pull this little pie chart just to kind of put in perspective for people the risk of driving. Let me go back to that one. When we talk about crash rates, it's actually not that huge of a number than I would expect. Overall, this is looking at the most severe injuries to the least severe injuries, so just all crash data. And what you can see is the percentage of fatalities is actually a teeny tiny sliver of this pie. So less than 1.56% is considered severe or a fatality of all crashes. So that's a good news. But then when we do have crashes, it's kind of broken into pieces here about how severe they are. You can see it's still a pretty high chance of having a minor injury or a possible injury whenever there's an accident at all. And then here I just wanted to show, this is again another little chart that's specific for the age group of 65 and older. And you can see that when we talk about fatalities, 85 plus, that's one of the higher end, and then 80 to 84 is also very high. So a lot of places are trying to figure out, well, what can we do to keep the older population even more safe. That lends partly into the next part of my conversation. So a lot of the vehicle manufacturers, and like think Honda, Toyota, Chevy, Ford, they're coming out with more and more safety features, and the goal is to keep all drivers safe. Some places are even more specific. They want to specifically keep older drivers safe. So this puts that rationale into perspective. So what can we do about specifically attention and reaction time changes? We recommend planning your route ahead of time. Drive on familiar roads. That way you're already knowing what to predict and be prepared for. Be aware of traffic patterns and conditions. Drive during the day. Avoid rush hours. And try alternate transportation options when you feel like conditions are not favorable to you. So have access to a bus. I know places like this, you can get a ride from place to place. You don't have to drive yourself everywhere. Behavior-wise, we maintain good following distance. Maybe keep an even larger space gap between yourself and the vehicle ahead. When approaching intersections, look to the sides of roads as well as directly ahead. It's easy to forget those little safety things to do. Always want to be looking all around. Avoid intersections at what we call unprotected left turns. So that means find a traffic light and go right. That's the easiest, safest thing to do. If your option is, no traffic light and you have to make a left turn across multiple lanes, that always is a little bit more risky. So traffic lights is the best way to go. Scan the road ahead continuously. This is another thing we watch for. Sometimes people kind of get this frozen state of vision where they're looking only straight ahead. That's a risk factor. You want to be able to keep looking all around, mirror to mirror, all the way across the road. You want to do that the entire time you're driving. And if that's fatiguing, that tells us maybe you should limit the amount of time you're behind the wheel. Same thing, minimizing distractions inside the vehicle. Make sure you're adjusting those controls before you get on the road, and certainly consult a doctor if you're experiencing memory loss or changes there. Physical changes. So some common things. I'm starting to get to the point in my own life where I'm familiar with these as well. So arthritis, inflammation, just joint pain altogether, strength changes. These make it difficult to operate the steering wheel, to tolerate sitting in the seat. Back and neck pain make it hard to check blind spots and view everything safely. And the loss of perception of high frequency sounds. So hearing changes makes it hard to identify sirens and horns. So I kind of wanted to pause on identifying physical factors and talk about some of these newer safety features on vehicles. And this might be a spot, if you all have questions on things, just let me know. So we have been asking about this more often in our driving evaluations. Does your vehicle have any IVIS or ADAS? And people are like, what is that? Here's what it is. So IVIS is just an in-vehicle infotainment system. That language has been around for quite a while. All that literally is the radio. Many cars have a touch screen on it with all your navigation, your onboard contacts, your voice controls. I just showed one example here of a more modern IVIS system, but that has changed a lot over the years on vehicles. I myself have a 2000 Wrangler, and it's got none of that. And many of you can relate to that with some vehicles you were first comfortable with. ADAS, so what is that? That just stands for Advanced Driver Assistance System. That, in our book, is a collection of electronic technologies that assist drivers in driving and parking functions. So the primary goal is to reduce the risk of human error. It's to reduce accidents. So it's important to kind of know what these do and what they do not do. They're meant to be an alert system. They're to alert you as the driver of a potential collision and allow you more time to react to that. They also may assist you as the driver in accuracy, things like lane assist, distancing, parking. They vary dramatically based on make and model, and it's important here, they're not the same as autonomous driving. A lot of times I'll bring this kind of thing up in clinic and they'll be like, oh, like a Tesla? How it drives itself? And I'm like, kind of, not quite the same, but you at least are familiar with this. So this is just a kind of visual on kind of what safety features are out there. Many of you are getting more and more familiar with this. Honestly, this is something where every time anyone gets into a car, You need to identify what are these features. Think like a rental situation. They put you in this spaceship thing and you're like, I have no idea what all these buttons do. This car's screaming at me. I don't know what's doing it. It's good to kind of take a moment to just familiarize yourself with these. And I'll talk a little bit more about these as well. So where did these all come from? Where are we going now? One of our other team members, she's actually our driving team lead, Emily, has been presenting a lot on this topic as of late at professional conferences, community presentations. So I pulled this slide from her. This just kind of shows, the beginning to the future of where we're going with this. The pre-2000s, the best we had in terms of ADAS was cruise control. And that's what they're calling level 0. Level 1 is they're calling it feet off. So that's more the vehicle can kind of sort of steer itself a little bit, can assist with acceleration and deceleration. Level 2 is hands off. So now the vehicle does the gas and brake a little bit, but it also does a little bit of the steering. That's like the lane assist. Anything where you're feeling the vehicle kind of take over a little bit if you're wavering, that's that level 2. Level 3 and beyond, oops, press the wrong button, technology. Level 3 and beyond is kind of where the future is going. That's what people are familiar with when they think autonomous driving, like a Tesla. That's truly, eyes off, then mind off. Driverless systems where, you plug in the destination and the vehicle just takes you there. And then finally, driverless, where this entire system would be completely, truly autonomous. That means problem solving. The vehicle knows what to do in certain situations and handles it the same way we as a driver would. By and large, right now, we are firmly at level 2 in what most folks have access to, which means we are nowhere near truly driverless driving, and we as drivers still have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. So that's just, I like that as a little history. So just 4 points to consider about vehicles with all these cool things. IVIS and ADAS are tools to help with driving. They do not replace the driver, they are supplements. All these safety features, even the ones that seem to let the car drive itself, they still require the driver to be an active player in this role. You have to be attentive to the road and ready at all times. Especially, these features are so new, we can't always rely on them 100%. So there are no available vehicles for purchase that allow the driver to disengage completely. The technology has limitations, and the technology is different in different vehicles. So it's important to know what features work in your car and what you're comfortable with. And then these technologies, it kind of leads into itself, it can be a source of its own distraction. If you're not comfortable with this, it can really throw you off. So we recommend consider reducing other distractions to reduce the cognitive load that these features may have on a driver. And certainly make sure you're asking questions about the vehicle to the right people to know how to use them and how to be comfortable with them if you want them. We have a question?
Go back 2 slides where it listed all the things around the one before this.
Okay.
Explain what some of those things are.
Okay, so we were asked to go back a couple of slides just to look at this graphic again. She wanted to explain what these different things are. So yeah, I'll just go over it a little bit. So up here we got lane departure warning, traffic sign recognition, adaptive cruise control, long range radar. It's just kind of just showing you where the different sensors might be located and kind of pointing out what those sensors might be related to. Of course, different for every vehicle. Down here we got emergency brake assist, pedestrian detection, collision avoidance system, LiDAR. That's a general set of sensors that can detect these things. Cross traffic alert, many of you might be familiar with that when your vehicle is specifically in reverse and you have the backup cam on, but then it beeps at you when a car is about to cross by. That's cross traffic. Mid-range radar is another form of a sensing system. That's something that it's right in this blue area here. So the LiDAR is going out a bit farther there in yellow. Blue area is coming up closer. Surround view camera and video camera, a lot of times that's just your backup camera. Remote access, that's like you can unlock your car with the key fob, you can turn it on with a remote start. Global positioning system, that's navigation. I think many of us are familiar with that and how it has changed over time. Rear collision warning, another cross traffic alert, that's coming from that blue section again. Another mid-range radar, up here. That's another kind of radar. This is just a really close proximity or ultrasonic radar. Another mid-range radar, it's just kind of calling it all out as you go around. Blind spot monitor, that's what many of you might see is that little yellow symbol that blinks on a mirror, or sometimes it blinks on your middle controls where the backup camera would be. And I think I've made it all the way around. Do we have more questions regarding this photo?
The next one tells the trouble with those things.
Yes, this one,
Go one more.
oh yes, this one,
The bottom two orange ones. You have to know how to use them, what they're doing, and then when they go off, and you got to know what it is.
yeah, you said it best. These last 2 points are really critical. You got to know what they're doing, you got to know how to use them, and when they go off, it can be stressful if you don't know what's going on.
And distracting when you don't need to pay attention.
Exactly. Stressful and distracting when you're trying to just pay attention to the road. That's a great call out. I love that. Thank you guys so much. Any other questions?
Also, they can be turned off inadvertently when you're having some work done on the car and not turned back on again, such as the that caught me one time.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, sometimes these features can be turned off inadvertently. You brought up the example of being at the mechanic shop. It can be turned off. It can also, sometimes they can be turned off while you're driving. Another perfect reason why we can't rely on these 100% of the time. You still have to be the driver at the end of the day. I love that. That's great.
What is IVIS?
Yeah, let me just go back a couple slides here. So IVIS is just the in-vehicle infotainment system. I consider this, it's a little bit more simple. There's nothing really safety related about these. It's just how you control the heat and how you turn on the radio and how you make calls in the vehicle, that kind of thing.
But you have to find those before you start driving if you want your heated seats. Once you start driving, you cannot find those right buttons.
Yeah, exactly. You want to know how to use your in-vehicle infotainment system. That's a mouthful every time I say it. Yeah. It's like the vehicle's computer. You got to get to know the vehicle's computer to turn all these features on and off. Exactly. She wants her heated seats. I do too. All right, I'm going to move on ahead here. All right. So we talked about kind of safety features on board the vehicle, and now I'm going to talk about tips to remain a safe driver as long as possible. So one thing is just knowing how to properly adjust your mirror, how to properly adjust all the pieces and parts in your vehicle. This just gives you a recommendation on how to actually adjust the mirror, make sure you're seeing more of what's next to the car rather than the side of the vehicle itself. There's lots of different kind of strategies to do this, but this is the general how to get it done. What to do about physical changes. So you want to not only adjust your side mirror and your rear view mirror in the middle, but you also want to realize what those things are showing you on the car. So this, I always like this graphic. I think it's helpful for drivers at any point in their driving career. This red car here, this is really what's happening in the blind spot of the vehicle. If it's right next to you, you might think you've seen it in the mirror, but then if it moves up or back a little bit, it's not there. And so that is truly the importance of adjusting these mirrors properly. The visible world, as they say on this graphic, is like the green and the yellow car that you can see very clearly all the way around the car. But it's this red one that we got to watch for, and that is what makes a mirror so important. Health and fitness is also important. We recommend continuing your daily habits. Try and find activities that utilize strength and coordination and mobility. Physicians can help you with this, but they might recommend you join health clubs or the YMCA, fitness groups. Certainly consult a physician if you're ever having pain, numbness, or tingling, especially those that are coming on acutely or that's happening fast and new. And swelling in your feet. These things play a huge role in your ability to operate the pedals. If you're having stiffness in your arms, legs, or back, you could see a physician to try and get in with physical therapy. They could send you a referral for that. Certainly also you want to keep in track of your cardiac and respiratory health. A lot of times we'll see individuals who were recently prescribed supplemental oxygen. Maybe they got out of the hospital and they needed that for a brief period of time, and then they're still driving a car. Doctors aren't always talking to you about all the ramifications of oxygen use. You do want to make sure that your blood oxygen level is at a level that it's not affecting your thinking processes. And that can happen a lot when you're put on supplemental oxygen. That can be a barrier for safety just because it slows down your processing speed, it changes your memory, it might even change your mood. We also recommend choosing a vehicle with automatic transmission, power steering, and power brakes, and many more things that we've already talked about in a couple slides ago. There's other ways that I think are really awesome that you can adapt a vehicle in terms of just getting in and out of the car safely. I love this device. It's just called a handy bar. You can get it on Amazon, and a lot of pharmacies carry this. What it does is it attaches this little hook into the actual vehicle hook for the car door. And pretty much when you go to get out the car, you grab this bar from wherever you've stored it next to you, you pop it in there, and you can kind of use that as a handhold to get out of the car. It's interesting, I think people aren't using things like this as much because the power seating in the vehicle can do so much for you to get in and out. So, but I like this kind of thing. There's also a swiveling cushion seat. It's called the Easy Swivel, also available on Amazon. And a seatbelt extender. These things are hugely important for anyone that's having neck pain, arm range of motion issues, shoulder issues. Sometimes it's really hard to reach across your body and buckle that seat in. An extender can be a simple fix for that. And you don't necessarily need prescription for any of these items. You could pick them up on your own. Certainly we can help with what you might need, but these are readily available. You have a question?
Yes, I was told to take out my seat cushion and not have any swivel, anything that could slide or change.
Okay, so we had a question that you were told to remove your cushion so that you don't have anything there while you're driving. My question is, where were you told that? Was that with our program? If we told you that, I would follow that recommendation. Sometimes these things can be a barrier.
Because of the cushion. It was to make me sit higher. And they said if you can't get lower your, I had to learn to look out a little bit.
So did they help you with how to adjust the seat so that you didn't necessarily need that cushion? That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's where I say these are things that are just out there. Certainly if you have your own questions on it and you're having trouble with something or another, that is a great reason to come out and see us for an appointment. Any other questions like that? This is a seatbelt pull here. You just attach it, kind of similar to those wool rolls you might put on, but it's just got a little handle on it and help you tug that belt across. Key grips, and a lot of these are 3D printed nowadays, so if you got any younger people in your life that are good at that kind of thing, maybe they can hook you up. Also, RFID blocking. Some people are really concerned about the safety of the remote entry that we have. There's ways that people can go in and kind of steal vehicles that way. I think that was a bigger concern a few years ago. I think those kind of safety features have gotten better over time. So I've not heard a lot of concern about that recently. And these are other OT favorites. Sometimes you need a leg lifter. That's all this guy is. And sometimes you just need help getting the gas tank open, so that just helps, spin open the gas cap. A lot of newer vehicles don't even have a gas cap anymore, so that just takes it out right there. So now we're getting into true vehicle adaptations. From here forward, these things do require a prescription from a team like ours. So something like a spinner knob here. Some people, if you've ever driven a large truck or a semi-truck, might have been familiar with something like this on a bigger vehicle, but it does require a prescription to have something like that. This is one that's even fancier. Now you can operate your windshield wipers, your turn signals right there on that spinner knob as well. That's for an individual that might be having trouble actually physically turning the wheel, or for somebody that needs to operate with hand controls. And here are hand controls. So a lot of times if you're starting to have trouble with your feet, like how we brought up like the swelling, diabetic neuropathy can be a big factor sometimes. If you're having any sensation or movement issues with your foot, you might see us to consider trying adaptive vehicle options, and hand controls is one of those. And what this is here, you're looking at where that hand is gripping, that controls both the gas and the brake. You push it in towards the dashboard for the brake, and you rock it back to drive. And there's lots of other adaptations from here. This just shows, some changes people can make to their car to help them get in and out of the vehicle, and some other devices that can help carry your other mobility equipment that you might have. Okay, and so going back to just health and fitness in general, it's important to understand and adapt to the health challenges you face that could jeopardize driving. Listen to observations and advice from individuals who care about you. This is so important. Ask your physician to evaluate your medication. Sometimes it's as simple as a medication change. Determine if they can affect your driving safety, and keep up to date on regular checkups with your team. So also, I kind of touched on this earlier, there are programs out there. If you just want to review your own safety skills, your own strategies for things, there are mature driver programs where it's just kind of like a abbreviated driver's ed course, but more at the level of an experienced driver with many years of safe driving behind them. So it just kind of reviews tips and tricks similar to what we're doing today, but more geared towards Ohio driving laws and rules. And there is a link for that in this slide as well. And it just helps you kind of refresh yourself. You can request a referral to these programs from your physician, or certainly from a program like ours as well. And here's some references. So we've made it to the end. I think I'm like right about on time. Thank you, everyone. Do we have any other questions? Yeah, there's one in the back.
You talked about not wearing tinted lenses as the lights going down, but I've seen those, they're like yellow and they're supposed to help with glare and stuff at night.
Yeah, so we had a question about, tinted lenses. There's some tinted lenses that might specifically help people when they're driving at night. You asked about yellow lenses specifically. Yeah, so sometimes they do. And actually, the interesting part about that question is that would be an eye doctor that would make that specific kind of prescription or recommendation. Where we come into play there, a lot of people that come into our program already have that recommendation from an eye doctor in place, or we're working specifically with individuals who have severely impaired vision and they're trying to stay driving. We call that our bioptic program. So a lot of that is drivers that are reduced to one eye that's functional for driving, and you have to learn whole different skills for that we teach. Lenses are super important for that kind of group of people. And that is one instance where, yeah, you do want to do those while driving. Certainly, what I was talking about was more just traditional sunglasses, things that are like a dark lens, that you want to avoid that at night. But yellow tint can help increase contrast, which is the main problem with driving at night. So that is something that would come directly from an eye doctor. Ask that question to them first, and then come after to us. Another question in the back?
When I get my oil changed at, see, it's Ford dealer, Germain or whatever it is. Anyway, I think they all do it. You can go to their parts department and they just give you one seatbelt extender.
Where?
To help you, I have a bad shoulder, so it helps me get, get hooked up. And you get one, which is all I needed, but, yeah.
Wow, okay, so in the back they said, went to a mechanic. You said it was Germain?
Well, I think all dealers do it. We are Ford Lincoln people, but, if you go, when I take it in for service, that's an opportunity when I could go in there and see what they have. But I do know, that they gift you one, and it really helps you. And then if you want another one, I don't know that, for your passenger. But, and then the other thing, that is so important that, is when you get gas or when you get in your car, I keep a little sponge and I wipe off my rear view mirror, my rear view circles.
That was awesome feedback and recommendations. Could everyone in the room hear her okay? Okay, I'll just summarize briefly because I think that's really cool. I have never heard of anyone going to a dealership and getting a seatbelt extender for free, but that makes a lot of sense because they have to match that vehicle's like belt specification. Most newer vehicles, they're all using that same system because that's how they do the crash testing standards. So, you know, in theory, if you got one seatbelt extender, it could fit into many, many vehicles, but
I never tried to use it on another car, but
yeah, and so that's really good to know. I just learned something. Thank you.
I had to order everything from Amazon.
I love hearing that. I also love hearing that you can get something for free through your dealer. That's always what we're about. So that's awesome. I will share that with folks. That's really good knowledge to know. So you can potentially get that from your dealer. Yeah, I want to talk on that too. So I was going to go back to that other slide. I was seeing if I had a quicker way to see all my slides and do that. But the slide with all the sensors we showed there, the LiDAR sensors, the mid-level sensors, ultrasound sensors, you can see where they're at actually on the vehicle. They're getting more and more subtle as the car models come out, but there'll be a little tiny circle with the same paint color as the car, but sometimes there's a little indentation around that circle that you can feel, or sometimes it's just simply a black line. That is where the sensor is located. So she's saying it's important to wipe those off. Yes, this time of year where there's still salt on the roads coming up on the vehicle or slush, those sensors will actually tell you if they're not functional. Just to tell a little anecdote, my husband works for Honda, and so, of course, we're a Honda family now, and we drive all these Honda cars. Well, he's got this brand new one. The first time he got on the road and drove it, it was the middle of the summer, and the front of the vehicle got pelted with whatever those big giant bugs are that hang out on the road in the summer. And the vehicles, all the safety signals started going off, screeching. And here we are, these younger people, and we're supposed to know everything about this, right? And we're like, oh my God, what's this car doing? And what it is the sensors got plugged with all the bug guts, for lack of a better word. And we had to get out and wipe them off, and then that fixed the whole issue. So you're right on. You want to make sure those sensors are clear.
I have at least 4 on the back of my car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, when you're at the gas station and somebody to wash your window, just take that sponge on that thing and go over them.
Yeah, taking the sponge at the gas station for your windshield, you could do that on the side of the car. That's great. I'm not sure the next person behind you will love that in terms of their own windshield, but I tend to just take like a paper towel that I had in my car, and it does the same. You just need to wipe it clear.
It's not any dirtier than your window.
Hey, you're right. You're right on. And plus they got like it's essentially glorified Windex there to clean the window, so that will make it really clean and not scratch your paint and whatever. But yeah, your question was, where are those sensors typically located? They are typically low around the vehicle. You'll notice them near the bumper. That's going to be the easiest point to identify them, is on the rear bumper and on the front bumper. And then once you identify what that circle looks like on your vehicle, you can find more. Some of them go a little bit higher depending on what kind of vehicle you have, but mostly they're around the bumper area.
The one that was most noticeable that I could tell was trying to back up after I'd driven in the slush. And you could hardly see out that time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think my thing that I do as a routine on top of clearing sensors at the gas station is every time I'm going in and out of my back hatch, I'm wiping the backup camera. I sometimes just swipe it with my thumb. We're doing that with our... Exactly, sometimes, because it's so little. That's all it needs. Yeah, so where's the backup camera? Typically it is on the, again, kind of near the bumper. They're typically positioned over the license plate somewhere. Some older models of this were kind of positioned off to the one side or the other, but mostly it's going to be directly in the middle. And it'll just look like a little tiny fisheye camera, because that's all it is. They are harder to see. They're like I said, all these safety things are getting more and more subtle. Yeah.
Many cars have right below the key for the truck. I know ours is what happened.
Yeah, right below the key, you're saying? Yeah. Yep. They're gonna be. Yeah. Yeah.
The one on the side that does the lane view.
Mm-hmm.
That's because when I put on my blinker, you see that there's a camera on the right-hand side mirror.
Yes, yeah. Some of the vehicles have like a camera that displays actually on your mirror. It's interesting. I can probably guess the year of your car based on that. Is it somewhere between a 2015 and a 2020? Uh-huh. They stopped doing that because they realized that people didn't like that as much. I think it's really cool. What it is it drew your eye to the far outside of the vehicle, and manufacturers have been moving away from that more recently. I would love to see the data behind that, honestly, but I bet every manufacturer has their own set of data. But
Especially when we get on a multi-lane road,
Mhm.
70, I wish there was one on the left. My car doesn't have the left, but it has the right.
Is your car a Honda? Yep. Honda stopped doing that. They moved away from that, unfortunately. So, another question?
I'm going to Jermaine and ask him to show me all the cameras.
Yes, yes. We have been recommending to a lot of people, if you're not sure where these safety features are in your vehicle, or, what's this thing that's beeping? What does this symbol mean? How do I turn it on? How do I turn it off? We recommend first place to start is go back to the dealer you receive that vehicle. They should be able to take a few minutes of their day just to show you where these things are. Another place I recommend, there are programs, like I told you about the mature adult driving programs, there's something called Car Fit. I meant to bring some brochures of these. Unfortunately, we are running low on all of our brochures at this very moment, but Car Fit programs are community-based kind of pop-up centers that will come to different locations, and they kind of put out blast emails to people. They'll go to the libraries, they'll go to kind of local community places, and you can pull your car up, and a certified Car Fit individual will check to make sure you're adjusted properly in your seat. And they also are starting to go over some of these basic safety features that are kind of widely available on cars. So I do recommend that as well. Yeah.
Just while she's plugging that, we are going to have Car Fit here at Friendship Village. Some of you might remember we had it last year. It'll be coming here again on June 4th this year. So there'll be more announcements closer to May for signing up for that, just while we're on that topic. And Christy also mentioned the mature driving courses. We had AAA come and do that last fall. They're going to come again this September and be on site for another mature driver class as well. So there'll be more information on those, so be on the lookout. But if you want to know the dates more in advance, please let me know, and I'll be happy to give you that information.
Thanks so much, Ava. You guys are so cool out here. You have it all right at the tips of your fingers. Awesome. And another question.
I just have a hint that I was told by a friend who knew the girl who was decapitated at a parking exit, because if you are putting your ticket into the parking meter as you're coming out of the garage, make sure your car is in park. Her foot, she had her arm and her head out her window. Her foot slipped presumably from the brake to the accelerator while she was leaning, and her car went forward and she was killed. So your car needs to be in park if you're opening your window and putting your ticket in.
Very good advice there with a very tragic story behind it. We hear of stories like that as well. Recently, at our most recent annual driving conference, all the CDRSs of the country and internationally come out, and we meet and we have educational sessions, trying to keep us up to date on all these things. Big issue that has been happening as a trend, kind of similar to that, is folks that are not aware of their sensory changes or their motor changes to their feet. You hear it on the news, I feel like all the time around here in Columbus, a vehicle just driving straight into a storefront. It's very easy to confuse gas and brake if you're losing sensation or you're having a motor change, or if you were distracted by doing something else. They're just trying to get your ticket out the machine. You're trying to figure out how to put this fancy spaceship into park. So we just recommend so much, it's very important. Get to know your vehicle before you actually get it out on the road, and know where to ask questions when you have them. We are certainly a resource for questions for driving. Any other questions from the room? Yes.
I'll just cross the lines for the Ohio State course, which I took 2 years ago.
Would you like the mic? Okay, she wouldn't like the mic, but okay.
It's excellent, and you get your doctor to do a prescription, and the in-house part is free, but the driver in a car, and it's in their car, unfortunately, Emily sat with the brakes on her side, and she used them once. But anyway, and you can have up to like 3 sessions that you pay for, about $100 a session, and invaluable.
We really appreciate that feedback. I'm so glad you had a good experience. We feel strongly, we don't want people to feel nervous coming to see us, especially if you're having a question on safety. Oh my gosh, we hope you're having a question on safety. We hope every single driver is concerned about being as safe as they can be at all times. And we want to make the experience friendly and helpful. Sometimes we have to have very, tough conversations. Those are not our favorite things to have, but we like to make that conversation in the frame of we're here to help, we're here to ensure your safety, we're here to ensure your independence in what is the best way for you. Yes, it's true when you come to see us, typically the clinical portion is covered by your insurance if it's a Medicare or a Medicaid plan. If it's a private insurance plan, the rules are different for every single one. And then typically, it's very common that on-road assessment is not covered. Medicare and Medicaid does not view the act of driving as medically necessary. So that's why that part is not covered. If we have to document our time together very accurately. And so if we're writing in our note, well, we drove a car today, the insurance, if it's Medicare or Medicaid, they say, well, that's not medically necessary. So that's why it's not covered. And then the sessions that are required is something that's individualized. So somebody that's learning a new technique to drive or a new kind of equipment, you might need more hours with us. And so we would go over that with you when you see us.
Can we come to you and you would honestly tell us not to drive anymore?
Can you come to us and we can honestly tell you not to drive anymore? Yeah. Those are our least favorite conversations to have, but they're really important conversations to have. We will stand by with you and we will tell you, hey, we don't think this is best. And we're not big, like my kind of script I use a lot, and certainly I mirror a lot of what the rest of our team does. We're not here to surprise you. We're not here to make you feel bad. We're here to be objective and do medical, clinical assessments together that test these things. For many individuals, it's the first time you've ever been tested on these things. I make a little joke about it, like we don't go through a 2-hour assessment when we first learn to drive a car at 16 or 17 or 18 years old. I wish we all maybe did, because then we'd have a true baseline. But we have to go with what the state of Ohio says, and every state has its own rules. But we like to look at it as an education time, time that you get just to sit down. This is all about you. And if we need to have a tough discussion, we will absolutely have it. But we'll do it in a way that is graceful and is respectful. We don't want anyone to fear that conversation. We want it to be empowering.
So is that information given to the BMV or your insurance company?
That's a great question. Yeah, people want to know what happens once we have a conversation to do not drive. Does that go to the BMV? Where does that go? What does that do for me? And we tell everyone the same thing. So when you sit with us, we are medical providers. And so the conversation we have is a medical recommendation. And so what that means is nothing goes to the BMV unless it has to. And so according to the state of Ohio laws on things, the physician is the one with the final say on somebody's medical ability to drive. And so what that means is the physician just sent you to us because they're looking for our recommendation. So if we're making a recommendation to not drive, or if we're making a recommendation to drive in a different way, we are expecting that an individual is going to follow that. And what happens is if the physician finds that you're not following that recommendation, they can suspend a license medically, and then it does become a BMV issue. So what we tell people is if, let's say we have the conversation, do not drive, or we have a conversation about something similar, you can keep your license as it is, doesn't change anything about it, you can use it as an ID, we just ask, don't use it to drive a car. That's all. Great questions. You don't have to tell your insurance company, you don't have to show us insurance, all we need is your medical insurance. That's it. And you do drive in one of our cars. Yes?
The slides went by very fast in the beginning, but you showed more fatal injuries for older people. But is that just because if we break a leg at age 88, we're more likely to die than if you break a leg when you're 18?
That's a very thoughtful question. The interesting part about how that data is collected, I'm going to go back and find that slide. I guess I'll use this one. So this is coming from the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, so it's a government-collected data set. All we can do with data is see what the data is. We can't always draw those kinds of conclusions on, hey, are people that are older having fatalities just because their bodies are more frail or something like that? We don't know the answer to that. All we can see is the data as it is. My perspective would allow me to kind of think of certain things. We know there's a lot more impairments involved with certain age groups. We talked about vision, we talked about physical things, thinking things, but it's hard to say. We don't really know. It's just data. It's a good question, though. Okay, so we're like coming up right on time. I really appreciate everyone's, questions and being engaged with us. We always have fun coming out here to see you all. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
I have one more that isn't for our age group, but I have had grandchildren with sports injuries who can't use their right leg, so they just drive with their left leg. Is that against the law or just unsafe?
Great question. That is something that would affect anyone of any age. So brought up the example of a young grandchild that had a sports injury, and now their right foot's in a boot, and they're driving with their left foot. Well, here's what's interesting about that, and here's what, just to let you in on kind of our insider take from a driver rehab standpoint. Many physicians, their touch point with you is brief, and they're focused on so many goals with you about getting your medical status stable. They are not going to go down the holistic picture of what does putting your foot in a boot mean for all of your activities. So oftentimes if you're seeing an ER physician, you're seeing your primary care doctor, they might recommend that you need to wear a boot for X amount of weeks. They're going to tell you, hey, here's your precautions, here's your restrictions, but they might not include discussions about driving. We are very familiar with that. I'll tell an anecdote. My own mother had a fall and had broken her toe, and they put her foot in a boot, and she called me and my sister on her way home from the ER, and she said, yeah, hon, I'm driving home. They put my foot in a boot, and I said, what? Mom, you're driving and your foot's in a boot? She goes, oh, yeah, it's fine. They didn't say I couldn't. I went, Mom, hold on, let's think about this. Can you pull over for a second? So, it's just my perspective on it. I'm so deep diving in this all the time. Having that big boot, especially people think like if you're wearing an AFO, if you have foot drop and they told you to wear this fancy brace to help hold your ankle up, those things directly put a barrier, a physical barrier between your foot and the pedal. How do you really expect to be able to feel that pedal well? How do you really expect to be able to control that pedal well? And unfortunately, doctors, I feel, that's an area where they could spend more time discussing that with a person right in front of you. And we see it very common. They come all the way to us, and they're like, oh yeah, well, no one told me I couldn't yet. I'm like, oh, well, okay, let's have this talk. Let's really think this out. Great example, yes.
You're talking about that, but over the years, I've probably observed, including myself, driving the left foot quite often, and a problem. It was very common through high school, college. My guess is that thousands of people do that every day.
Yeah, right on. Lots of people, we are adaptable human beings. If we are faced with a problem and we got to get our day-to-day stuff done, we're going to do it. Yeah, probably thousands of people will switch over and drive with their left foot. Probably, here's another thing I hear. Somebody has a leg amputation. Now they are using a cane to physically push a pedal. And or I've had somebody that lives on the Ohio River Valley, and they're a mechanic, and they've lived their whole lives making their own homestead, and they know everything about every single tool and mechanical aspect, and they have made a set of hand controls. They're on their own, and they've never had any prescription, they've never had anything, they don't have it even on their license that says they can drive that. There's true legalities to this. Technically, if we're going to be really technical based on Ohio Revised Code, driving the vehicle in any other adapted setup that's not explicitly stated on your license is illegal. But no one knows that unless you're in my role. And the fact of the matter is, you're right on. People will just do it, and I will have no way to control it. Our program has no way to control it. We're not saying that's bad to do it that way, but we are here to say, hey, let's educate you. Let's figure out what's a safer way to do that. Let's have that conversation. And we're always trying to get in front of the doctors and say, hey, doctors, let's encourage more of this discussion right when you're in that first appointment with your patient. and kind of go from there. So I love these conversations. It gets us thinking critically about driving. The fact of the matter is driving is very important to us, and we're all going to figure out a way to do it. Yeah.
One last thing.
Okay.
I'm commenting on coming to you to be assessed, and you say, we suggest you do not drive. I would never then be able to get in the car again and drive, because if I had an accident and somehow a lawyer could follow the trail back and find that, I'd be sick to the skies.
Yeah, that is a major concern. Our medical recommendation, anything you go over with a rehab group like us that's going in your medical record, yeah, there's a paper trail for that. There's lots of consequences to not following a medical recommendation, even broader than driving and safety. You could get hurt, you could get into an accident, you could hurt somebody else. And we hope that you have enough, sense of insight to be aware of that and know that you want to keep yourself safe and others safe. And certainly we're always here for that conversation. Thank you all again so much. I so appreciate y'all being here. It's always fun.